I can't help lightly rewrite that transcript while keeping it essentially the same. But I can give you a fully original script on the same topic with a fresh structure, simple English, no headings, no names, no blank lines, fast pacing, and about the same overall length. Here it is. Going no contact with a toxic person is not a small step. It is not drama. It is not a game. It is one of the hardest choices a person can make, especially when that bond was built through confusion, hope, fear, and emotional ups and downs. You may look calm on the outside, but inside it can feel like a storm. Part of you wants peace. Part of you still wants answers. Part of you knows you had to leave. And another part still struggles with the pull. That is why no contact feels so heavy at first. You are not only walking away from a person, you are walking away from a pattern that trained your mind to stay alert, to explain, to fix, to wait, and to chase clarity that never fully came. And the truth is this: when you go silent, they do not always see it as the end. Many times, they see it as a challenge. They do not sit there thinking, I should respect this boundary. They sit there thinking, let's see how long this lasts. Let's see if the door is really closed. Let's see if I still matter. That is why your silence can shake them more than your anger ever did. Anger still gives them contact. Silence gives them distance. And distance threatens the control they once had. If you have ever felt guilty for stepping back, or weak because you still think about them, stay with me. This matters. Because once you understand what they are often hoping for during no contact, you stop taking the bait so easily. You stop reading every sign as deep meaning. You stop confusing their patterns for love. And most important, you start protecting your peace like it is the most valuable thing you own. Because it is. And if this is hitting close to home, keep listening. Because the biggest mistake people make is thinking no contact is only about blocking a phone number. It is much deeper than that. It is about taking back your mind, your energy, your time, and your sense of self. The first thing they often want is a reaction. Not always a big one, not always a dramatic one. Sometimes something tiny is enough. A reply, a view, a late night text, a sudden post that sounds emotional, a small sign that says they still live somewhere inside your thoughts. That is often enough for them to feel powerful again. Because for a controlling person, attention is fuel. Good attention, bad attention. It does not matter as much as people think. Praise can feed them. Anger can feed them. Even your sadness can feed them if it proves they still affect you. So when you go quiet, they may start testing the space. Maybe they watch your online activity. Maybe they ask someone about you. Maybe they post something vague that feels aimed in your direction. Maybe they say nothing at all and wait for your mind to do the work. The goal is often the same. They want proof that your silence is not real freedom. They want proof that somewhere under the surface you are still emotionally tied to them. This is why small reactions matter more than people realize. The message is not always in the words. The message is in the fact that you responded. Once you react, they can tell themselves the connection is still alive. And if the connection is still alive, then in their mind, access is still possible. That is why silence feels so different to them. It removes the easy supply. It makes them uncertain. It forces them to face a loss of influence, and many of them do not handle that well. So they poke at the bond. They look for cracks. They wait for loneliness, guilt, nostalgia, or curiosity to wear you down. If you have ever almost broken no contact, just to say one thing, just to clear your name, just to defend your side, just to get closure, that urge is exactly where the trap often begins. A single reaction can reopen a door that took you months to close. So remember this: not every message deserves an answer. Not every silence needs to be filled. Not every feeling needs to become action. Sometimes your greatest strength is doing nothing at all. And yes, that is hard. But hard does not mean wrong. It often means you are finally breaking the cycle. The second thing they often want is your guilt. This one runs deep, because many caring people do not just walk away and feel free. They walk away and then start wondering if they were too harsh, too cold, too impatient, too unforgiving. That inner conflict is exactly what makes guilt such a powerful tool. A toxic person may not even need to say much. They may let silence do the work. They may act wounded through other people. They may paint themselves as misunderstood. They may hint that you abandon them. And slowly, your mind starts doing what it was trained to do. It starts carrying their feelings for them. It starts asking whether you hurt them by protecting yourself. It starts confusing boundaries with cruelty. That is a dangerous mix, because once guilt gets strong enough, it can make you betray your own healing. You may feel the need to explain again. You may feel the need to soften your boundary. You may even feel responsible for their pain, even when much of your pain was ignored for a long time. This is why guilt must be seen clearly. Guilt is not always proof that you did something wrong. Sometimes guilt shows up because you finally did something different. Sometimes it appears because you stopped over-functioning for someone who benefited from your self-doubt. And if you are a person with empathy, you are more likely to feel this strongly. You may think, what if they are hurting? What if they are alone? What if I misunderstood everything? But ask yourself this: did your kindness create peace, or did it keep you trapped? Did your explanations bring understanding, or did they get twisted again and again? Did your compassion heal the bond, or did it become the doorway through which more confusion entered? That matters, because some people do not want your love in a healthy way. They want your emotional labor. They want your care without accountability. They want your softness without giving safety back. So during no contact, guilt can become the hook they hope will drag you back. That is why you must be careful with the stories your mind tells at night. Missing someone does not erase what happened. Feeling bad does not mean your boundary is wrong. And wondering if you were too strong is often what happens right after you finally stop being easy to control. If that lands with you, hold on to it. You do not need to be cruel to stay away. You only need to be clear. The third thing they often want is space inside your mind. Even if they cannot reach your phone, they still want to reach your thoughts. This is where no contact becomes more than physical distance. You can block a number and still feel trapped for weeks because the real battle is often mental. They want you replaying old talks. They want you going over every mixed signal. They want you studying their social media like it holds the final answer. They want you wondering whether they meant what they said, whether they ever cared, whether the good moments were real, whether they have changed, whether they miss you, whether they are treating someone else better. That mental loop can eat up your energy one quiet hour at a time. And the harder you try to solve them, the more attention they still receive from you, even in their absence. That is why confusion is such a powerful tool in unhealthy bonds. Confusion keeps you attached. Clarity sets you free. When affection and pain get mixed together, your mind struggles to sort the truth. You remember the charm, then you remember the coldness. You remember the promise, then you remember the disappointment. You remember the sweet moment, then the sudden punishment. It starts to feel like a puzzle you must solve before you can move on. But here is the hard truth. Some puzzles were never meant to be solved. They were meant to keep you busy. They were meant to keep you emotionally occupied while your own life stood still. So when you keep analyzing every little thing, you may think you are healing, but sometimes you are feeding the old bond in a quieter form. This is why real recovery is not only about staying away from them, it is about reducing the mental rent they still collect from your attention. It is about catching yourself when you spiral. It is about saying, I do not need one more theory. I do not need one more clue. I do not need to decode every post, every silence, every memory. The need to understand everything can become its own prison. Freedom begins when you stop asking questions that keep you chained to the past. And let's be honest, that is not easy. But if you are still here, hear this clearly. Healing does not always start with a big breakthrough. Sometimes it starts the moment you refuse to give them one more hour of your peace. The fourth thing they often want is for you to doubt your decision. Not just miss them, doubt yourself. That is different and it matters. Missing someone can happen after any ending, but doubting your own reality is what keeps toxic cycles alive. They want you to forget why you left. They want time to blur the sharp edges. They want the lonely nights to make the past look softer than it really was. Over time, the nervous system calms down a little, and when that happens, the mind can start editing the story. The pain becomes less vivid. The tension fades in memory, and suddenly the charm begins to look bigger than the damage. You start remembering the laughter, the chemistry, the closeness, the exciting moments, and you stop feeling the full weight of the confusion, the fear, the exhaustion, and the emotional whiplash that came with it. They count on that. They often trust time to work in their favor. That is why some people reappear only after a certain gap. Not too soon, not too late. Just when your guard is lower and your pain is less fresh. Then comes the small message, the casual check-in, the old memory, the song, the little sign that seems sweet, harmless, maybe even meaningful. But many times it is not about growth. It is about testing access. They want to know if your boundary still holds. They want to know if longing has replaced clarity. They want to know if nostalgia can unlock what pain once closed. This is why keeping your own record of reality can help. Not because you want to stay bitter, but because memory can become selective when the heart is tired. Write down what happened. Write down how you felt. Write down what kept repeating. Write down the patterns, not just the promises. Because when doubt creeps in, facts can steady you. Doubt grows in emotional fog. Truth grows in clear reflection. And if you feel yourself slipping into maybe it was not that bad, stop and ask a better question. Was I truly at peace? Could I be myself? Did I feel safe, respected, and emotionally steady? Or was I always trying to earn small pieces of care while ignoring big pieces of pain? That question cuts through the fog. And if this part is making you uncomfortable, that may be a sign it is touching something real. Stay with it. Because the moment you stop romanticizing the cycle is the moment the cycle starts losing power over you. The fifth thing they often want is another chance without real change. This is one of the hardest traps to resist because it often arrives wearing the face of hope. Maybe they sound softer. Maybe they seem calmer. Maybe they say they have been thinking. Maybe they tell you they understand now. Maybe they say all the words you waited so long to hear. And for a moment, your heart wants to believe it. Of course it does. Most people do not walk away because they stopped caring. They walk away because caring was not enough to make things healthy. So when even a small sign of improvement appears, it can wake up the old dream, the dream that maybe this time will be different. Maybe now they finally see your value. Maybe now they will stop hurting you. But hope is dangerous when it grows faster than evidence. Real change is not a mood. It is not a speech. It is not one emotional message after a long silence. Real change takes time, humility, consistency, and accountability. It shows up in patterns, not performances. It shows up in behavior that stays steady even when no one is praising it. And that is exactly why many people get pulled back in. Because what returns first is usually not deep repair. What returns first is emotional intensity, the old pull, the old chemistry, the old urgency, the old promise. And if you mistake intensity for transformation, the cycle can restart before you even realize it. Then comes the same confusion again, the same excuses, the same distance after closeness, the same ache, the same self-abandonment. This is why no contact threatens them so much, because no contact stops the easy reset. It forces space where they once relied on access. It removes the constant chance to pull you back with a few well-timed words. And if they sense that you still want the fantasy version of them, they may lean into that image just enough to keep the door cracked open. So be careful with promises made in the exact tone that hurt you before. Be careful with sudden insight that appears only when you are finally leaving. Be careful with apologies that ask for trust before they build safety. You do not owe repeated chances to someone who used your hope as a bridge back into your life. And if you need to hear this today, here it is. Wanting to believe the best in people is not weakness, but ignoring repeated patterns can become self-betrayal. Protect your hope by giving it to people who can carry it responsibly. The sixth thing they often want is control over the story. When access to you gets cut off, many of them do not simply sit quietly with that loss. They try to shape the narrative. They may act like you were the problem. They may tell others you were dramatic, unfair, impossible, distant, or cold. They may leave out key details. They may turn your boundary into a personal attack against them. Why? Because if they can control how the story sounds, they can protect their image and keep future doors open. They can also pressure you into defending yourself. And once you start defending yourself, you are back in their orbit. That is the part many people miss. Smear, confusion, and indirect drama are not always random. Sometimes they are designed to provoke contact. They want you to rush in and correct the record. They want your emotions activated. They want you explaining yourself to people who were handed only half the truth. But not every lie deserves your energy.
Not every misunderstanding needs your voice.
And not every person who believes the worst without hearing your side is meant to stay close to you anyway. That sounds harsh, but it is freeing. Because part of healing is accepting that some people will never understand the full story, and your peace cannot depend on universal approval. This is especially hard for honest people. Honest people want to clear things up. Honest people want fairness. Honest people want the truth to win quickly. But toxic dynamics often do not play by those rules. If someone needed your confusion to keep control, they are not likely to tell the clean truth once you leave. So instead of asking, how do I make everyone see what really happened? Ask, how do I stop bleeding energy into a fight that keeps me tied to the past? That question protects you. And yes, it hurts when your silence gets misread. It hurts when your distance gets called cruel. It hurts when your strength gets framed as selfishness. But other people's labels do not erase what you lived through. You know what it cost you to get here. You know how many times you tried. You know how long you stayed, explained, forgave, and hoped. So do not let a rewritten story pull you back into proving your pain. The people who truly care will notice your peace, your consistency, and your honesty over time. And those who only want the performance were never a safe audience to begin with.
The seventh thing they often want is for you to stay emotionally available to the old cycle, even if you never return physically. This may be the deepest piece of all, because some people think winning means getting you back in the room. But often what matters just as much is knowing they still matter to you in a painful, active, consuming way. If you still check, if you still ache, if you still compare yourself to the new person, if you still want an apology more than peace, if you still build your recovery around what they may think, feel, or do, then part of your energy is still revolving around them. That lingering orbit can last long after the relationship ends. And that is why emotional detachment matters so much. Not coldness, not denial, detachment. The kind that says, I remember what happened, but I no longer offer my nervous system to it every day. I no longer pause my life waiting for justice from someone who lived by confusion.